something like filleted carp.
Or fried carp.
Carp.
That's pretty awkward.
Yeah, just another one of the marvelous shits. Yeah. So remarkable. Yeah. So
Okay.
remarkable.
Right off the bat, let me say that this is not an explanation or a theory craft as to whether or not people in the Pokemon universe eat Pokemon. That doesn't actually matter, because in this universe, if Pokemon existed, we would definitely eat them. What this is trying to figure out how exactly edible these Pokemon would be in our day-to-day. So about a year ago, I was working in my office and I was sitting on Excel, and I thought, why don't I just determine a formula that could calculate the edibility value of every single Pokemon in the Pokedex. I posted the whole thing once I was done on Reddit and got to some kind of interesting conclusion. However, the year has passed. We've gone through a pandemic. My standards for food have changed. The formula was faulty. We're going to go into where the formula comes from, and we're going to do the math again, and we're going to come up with a new score for every single Pokemon, and that will determine the edibility value of them. How do we start? You have to have some sort of metric that each Pokemon can be determined against. Some sort of thing that determines their abilities, their weaknesses, their type, if you will. Luckily, every single Pokemon in the game not only has one, sometimes they even have two types. So if we take both of those values, that will give us a good metric of how tasty those Pokemon would be. Now it's about putting those values into some sort of point system. So I've developed a tier list. Starting at the top, we have Gourmet. This would be Fairy and Dragon. Fairy and Dragon being 20 points because they are literally mythical creatures. If you were able to even catch one and then serve it, I would assume it would taste very good. Next on the tier list is Good Food. So this is kind of like your basic stuff. I gave this a value of 10 points because this is just what you would eat. You have water, which is fish, you have grass and flying, which are both, your plant life and your vegetable fruits, and then you have flying, obviously, which is like your pheasant or avian creatures, and normal, which is kind of like your cows, your bulls, and other normal things you would eat. Oddity is the next category. This would be stuff that you would definitely still eat, but you'd be a little questionable about. Could be very good, but you don't know, and you don't have the system to determine without just biting in. For that, they get 5 points, and those are Bug, Dark, Psychic, and Fighting. Dubious is the next lower category. This is essentially just the elemental types that I don't think are really possible to eat, but you kind of could. That would be Fire, Electric, and Ice. It gets 1 point for, again, just being possible, but probably isn't the best experience you'd ever have. At the very bottom, we have just the Y category. The Y category is made up of creatures that, quite frankly, just aren't edible. You have Rock, Steel, Ghost, Poison, and Ground. So now that we have type values, it would be really easy to say that just a dragon is more tasty than, a water type. But if that water type happened to be much, much larger, like a Gyarados versus some sort of like really tiny dragon, then you would think to yourself, well, that Gyarados has more edibility value, given that I could slice him up and make him into a lot of different meals. So we're going to take weight. Weight is done in kg. We're going to take that value and times it by the type values added together if they're a double type, and that will be the number that we will get out. However, that still would not be an edibility value because there's no control. There's no base value that we have to compare it to. So when I originally did this formula, I used Tauros as the base value. I took his number that he outputted, and that became the Tauros base value that all of the other numbers got divided against, so that one Tauros would be one edibility value, be one EV unit. However, a Tauros is quite a large creature, and no one could functionally just eat a Tauros. It'd literally be like the example of I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, and then you just eat a Tauros. With Tauros being too big, I figured I'd just take a page right out of Brock and Ash and just use Magikarp. Turns out Magikarp's actually a really good choice, by the way, because with the water type value of 10 and his weight in kgs of 10, his number, when you put it through the same formula, is actually just 100. So it's actually the greatest number to divide this whole thing by. So with that new Magikarp base value, what I can do is I can take the type values added together times the kg of the Pokemon, divide that by 100, the Magikarp base value, and that will give us the true answer to the edibility value of every individual Pokemon. Now, I'm going to take a pause here to bring up the fact that getting a list of every Pokemon's type and weight is actually incredibly hard to do. When I originally did this, I found someone who had a Pokédex complete up to Generation 5, so my original Edibility chart actually doesn't truly include fairies, because for some reason Pokemon didn't have a type that existed since the beginning of time up until Generation 6, so I guess Generation 6 comes out and a bunch of Pokemon just wake up being fairies, which makes Pokemon kind of work like how Republicans think gay people work. All that to say is I now had to individually input from Bulbapedia every Pokemon's weight and value up until I found out that there was this wonderful thing called Pokemon API, which some wonderful people put together, that I then had to learn how to do an API with Google Sheets, which I had never done before. And it was actually an incredible amount of time just to collect all the information on every Pokemon. So a lot of work went into this. Shout out to the Pokemon API people and their wonderful documentation. But I hope to never have to do this again. The link to this, by the way, with every value is in the description, and I'm just going to go through just kind of the most important values. So let's start with most edible Pokemon. So the most edible Pokemon in the entire game is a Pokemon called Guzzlord. I didn't know Guzzlord existed. Apparently he's one of the Loa super beasts or whatever. But he has a value of 222 EVs. If you take away legendaries from this list, which by the way, because of just their sheer size, they take up like the top 40 positions, the next most edible Pokemon would be Executor, but the Alola version, the one with the really long neck we all made fun of collectively for a while. He has an edibility value of 124 EVs. Outside of Alola versions and all the legendaries, the most edible Pokemon would be Dragonite, which is 63 EVs. So now if we go to the bottom of the list, you obviously have a bunch of zeros because of Pokemon with types that have no value, or sometimes they're even dual typed and no value. However, right above zero is a 0.003 edibility value Pokemon, and that would be Rotom. Rotom, the base value is 0.003. He has like 5 other forms, and they're all just that low, mainly because his weight's that low. Now that we have both the least edible and most edible Pokemon, I kind of wanted to just take a special look at Eevee itself, because not only does Eevee sound like the made-up unit I made up for this whole thing, I just kind of want to know which of the evolutions are the least and most edible. So Eevee itself has a value of 0.65 EVs, and just because it's lower weight than Magikarp and it's just not that big of a thing. The most valuable EV to eat would be Sylveon, just because of its fairy type, and it's the only, there's not a dragon type EV, so nothing can really beat that. And the least valuable evolution would be Jolteon at 0.24 EVs. So that's it. That's pretty much the entire thing. You can again see the thing below. It took way longer than it really should have. Filming this has taken way longer than it really should have. There really isn't a reason to do any of this. I hope it's given someone enjoyment. I hope it's had some meaning in someone's life. But if it didn't, oh well. Stay safe out there. I don't know how to end videos because this is the first one I've even started. So, bye.